and welcome to Lecture 24. We're picking up where we left off last time. And so after the sperm cell joins the secondary oocyte, after fertilization occurs, and to your lecture outline now, also after fertilization then, the secondary oocyte, as you know, as you'll recall, divides into two cells. One, a very large cell containing the genetic information from both parents, and then a much smaller cell called a polar body, which is later expelled, which does not become part of the developing embryo. And you might just want to make a note right now at this point to go back at some point and take a look on page 843, and there's a diagram you'll recall, and there's a very nice photograph of this first polar body. Continuing along then, the fertilized egg cell, you'll recall, is called a zygote, and then continued cell divisions by a process called mitosis will produce the future offspring. This gets us into 23.2 in your textbook then, the section on pregnancy and the prenatal period. And so following along, the presence of a developing offspring in the uterus, of course, is called pregnancy. And pregnancy, of course, consists of 3 periods, each called a trimester, each trimester about 3 months long. And so typically pregnancy then will be about 9 months in length, 3 months for each of the first 3 trimesters, or for the 3 trimesters, so 9 months total. Continuing along on your outline then, this prenatal period usually lasts for about 38 weeks from conception, from fertilization. So again, here's our 9 months that we're talking about. And this period then can be divided into an embryonic stage and a fetal stage. And what we're saying here then is that we use the term embryo for the stage beginning with the fertilized egg, and we continue to use that term embryo through the 8th week of development. And then after this 8th week of development, instead of calling the developing structure an embryo, we now refer to it as a fetus. And so, following along now, embryonic stage. Again, this embryonic stage lasts from fertilization through the 8th week of development. And note also then from your outline, during this time, the placenta forms, and of course by now you're familiar with this process. And also during this embryonic stage, during this first 8 weeks of development, the main internal organs develop, as you can see from your outline, and the external body structures appear. And of course, you've seen quite a bit of this with the 2 videos that you watched, the Miracle of Life video, followed by Life's Greatest Miracle, that second video. So on to the next page of your handout now, and notice we're still in 23.2. We're still talking about pregnancy and the prenatal period, and specifically we're still talking about the embryonic stage. And so now this period of cleavage, and you'll recall this from your lab manual, and so the period of cleavage, rapid cell division, distribution of the zygote's cytoplasm into progressively smaller cells during embryonic development. Again, this period then is called a period of cleavage. Cleavage, remember, just basically means splitting. When you cleave something, you split it. And so what's happening then is that that zygote is undergoing cleavage, becoming, back to your handout again, a 2-cell stage. These 2 cells dividing, cleaving by mitosis, and we go to a 4-cell stage, and then through continuing divisions, continuous cleavage divisions, continuous mitotic divisions. We go from a 4-cell stage to an 8-cell stage to progressively more and more cells, smaller and smaller individual cells as we produce more and more of them. And you'll recall then that at a point where we have a fairly large number of cells, we refer to the structure as a morula. You recall also then that the morula is, as I said, still a solid ball of cells, and then keep in mind that the morula in turn transforms into a hollow ball of cells, and this hollow ball of cells then is the blastocyst. And so just for a quick review, let's take a look on page 876, and you might just want to jot down off to the left now that we're doing this. At this point in the lecture, we're looking on page 876 at figure 23.5, so the top half of the page. And again, take just a minute and maybe first of all, just follow that line of cells that's being shown up at the top and developing from left to right and going from then the zygote to the 2-cell stage to the 4-cell stage and eventually into an early morula stage and then through more mitosis going on into a so-called late morula stage. And take a look also now, just for review, at the bottom part of figure 23.5 and go ahead and find where ovulation is occurring, and then recall that fertilization occurs fairly close to the ovary, fairly high up in the fallopian tube, and then again just follow those arrows and follow the developing embryo on down the fallopian tube. Find the point then where the late morula stage is entering the uterus. Take a look off to the right now and notice the expanded view, the larger view of the blastocyst, and recall then that within the blastocyst, within this largely hollow ball of cells, there's a clump of stem cells called the inner cell mass. And it's, recall then, this inner cell mass that will continue to develop through the embryonic stage and through the fetal stage. And so, of course, it's this clump of stem cells that eventually produces the baby. Let's go back to the lecture outline now and notice the next term is one that I don't think we've talked about before. So the term is trophoblast. And now we're back to, if you want to jot down again off to the left on your lecture outline, we're taking a look now at figure 23.6. And this is the lower part of page 876. Take a minute now and find the structure called the trophoblast. And so 23.6, notice to the left, the trophoblast is being diagrammed, is being shown in a diagram. Really nice photograph off to the right of the trophoblast. And you'll notice then that the trophoblast is the surface of the blastocyst. The trophoblast is this single surface layer of cells. And as you can see again then, the trophoblast surrounds the inner cell mass. To your lecture outline now, and talking about implantation and the embedding of a blastocyst then into the lining of the uterus. into the endometrium is called implantation. And if you think back to the two NOVA videos, and especially to the second video, especially to Life's Greatest Miracle, you'll recall there was some amazing photography at this point in the video where the inner cell mass, actually where the entire blastocyst made its escape, I think is the term that was used, from the surrounding zona, the surrounding zona pellucida. And so again, think back to the video and recall that blastocyst containing the inner cell mass kind of squeezing its way out of this protective surrounding zona or zona pellucida. And recall then that the blastocyst again lands, if you will, on the inner surface of the uterus, lands on the endometrium, and embeds and implants there. And then back to figure 23.6, off to the left, as you go from the A to the B portion of the diagram, you can see that the trophoblast now starts extending into, notice the term they're using here is invading, the endometrium. To your lecture outline again, so the trophoblast now secretes a hormone, human chorionic gonadotrophin, HCG, which maintains the corpus luteum, and by now you guys are familiar with the corpus luteum. So it maintains this corpus luteum during the early stages of pregnancy and prevents the immune system from rejecting, from attacking the blastocyst. And continuing along then on your lecture outline, the detection of HCG in the blood or in the urine confirms pregnancy. And HCG then also stimulates the synthesis of other hormones from the developing placenta. And this HCG then is secreted at a high level for about 2 months, and then its concentration, the concentration of HCG, declines quickly after that point. We'll stop here then for this lecture, and we will pick it up in lecture 25, looking at the extraembryonic membranes and how they form, and looking at the development of the placenta as well.